Hello and welcome back to another episode of Rugby with Pads. Probably this has been a little time coming actually, and I haven't recorded it in a little bit, mainly because we had quite a lot of stacked content going back, and we had our beginner series, we've had the Draft 102 now, we've had the Dynasty Draft Review, we've had some chunky episodes, and now is time for a series of slightly lighter episodes. We're going to move on to our Draft Tier series. So prerequisites for listening to this, not really anything, but I would advise you to have a listen to Draft 102. The first part of it goes through my top 20 tips, so the 10 101 tips, and the next 10, which is a bit more advanced. And spoiler alert, one of my last recommendation for all is to draft in tiers. Now, tier-based drafting is not saying I have a list of players that I need to get, and I will go down that list until I get the player that I want or I think is the appropriate value for where I am. What it is grouping players in a way that makes sense to your team makeup and ultimately will help you to make the best decision for the position you're in when you're drafting. So, I might have elite players who I potentially match up with a particular areas or of the draft, particular moments of the draft, or if I've done certain things. So, you know what, we're going to go through it, and you'll see the workings of the machinations that I've got. These are as of now, and what I want to do is start off by doing quarterbacks. Now, quarterbacks at the moment are probably the most static position in the league. I wanted to leave running backs till a bit later and wide receivers as well because there's still a bit of uncertainty, especially at the running back position. And tight ends will be last because, spoiler alert, it's going to be relatively simple there. And if we get a chance, we'll see how these episodes go. We might do a little mock at the end, but we will go on into our mock draft mania on week 5 of this series, I guess, where we will have 5. No less than 5 mock drafts for you to get your teeth into. We'll do some fun stuff there. But without further ado, let's jump into the tiers. Now, you'll see on screen it's a bit messy because I'm just using a tier maker here. For those of you not listening not watching on YouTube, you can take a look, and what I'll do is I'll post some screenshots of this. But I've split my quarterbacks into various tiers, and I've tried to make it as simple as possible. I could have loads of tiers depending on how I group them, but effectively what these guys are going to be is groups in chunks of value, how I see it anyway. So, you know what, let's start with the obvious one, and we're going to build this as we go along. We are going to start with Mr. Patrick Mahomes. Now, Patrick Mahomes is probably going to be the QB1. He has been, there or thereabouts for the longest time. He is a tier 1 selection. But does that mean you should always draft him first? Now, or does that mean you need to draft him in the first round? So it's not we're not considering ADP, we're considering like-minded players, and we're using that to make decisions. And I think there are a couple of players who I would pick in that grouping with Patrick Mahomes. One of which is Josh Allen. Now, Josh Allen has had some amazing seasons. He has maybe had to play second fiddle to Patrick Mahomes in the grand scheme of AFC quarterbacks, but he is a fantastic player. He's got some great weapons around him, and unlike Patrick Mahomes, who is known as an off-base passer, he's got some designed runs in him. He's got some pocket presence. Josh Allen is great and potentially has better weapons around him. I think the mark of a good quarterback for some is how good they make the players around them. I think Patrick Mahomes makes the players around him better. Josh Allen has been in a good situation with Stephon Diggs, and until something happens about Stephon Diggs, we're going to keep him in that top tier. Following closely behind them, though, I think is someone who has really come good this last season, and who had possibly the most amazing performance in the Super Bowl. It is, of course, Jalen Hurts. So I'm going to put Jalen Hurts as, I'm not decided whether I'm going to have any more people in my tier 1, but I'm going to put Jalen Hurts in my tier 1 to make it simple. He is going to, it's always been a case that running quarterbacks are a bit of a cheat code, and Jalen Hurts is no exception. He is their running back. He is their goal line back. He is everything. Plus, he can sling the ball to some great wide receivers. He gets a lot of points, and he can stack them as well. And you can stack players with him effectively. Whereas with Mahomes and Kelsey, it's not going to work. It's potentially 2 first rounders there. Um, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, it's going to be a push, but you're paying really high up for that. But Jalen Hurts and Dallas Goedert, I like that. Jalen Hurts and Devonta Smith, it's got a big enough gap that I like that as well. Even sometimes people consider AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts if they, if AJ Brown maybe being your first round pick and Jalen Hurts if you slip to the third. The way I see it though is if you're drafting, you have these guys, and if you know you want to target a tier one running back, sorry, tier one quarterback, you should be happy with any one of these three because I think they're going to have very similar outcomes. And then you get a tier break. Now, a tier break for me is a bit interesting because I still think there are league winners, and you know what, we're going to just make this easy on ourselves and go down the list a little bit. And someone who I am picking on as being a potential league winner is this man, Justin Fields. I might just be projecting because I have Justin Fields as my keeper in my league of record. I believe him. You listen to the My Guys episode, he is my guy in that. But he has all the hallmarks that you want out of a tier one quarterback, but maybe for a little less value or a little less capital in your draft. You're going to be able to get him in the fifth or sixth potentially. I know his ADP is relatively high, and I think someone who is also there, who I think has, where Justin Fields is on the up, someone who was on the down and maybe is maybe down on people's expectations is Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is a previous MVP. He is good. He's got weapons around him now. He's got a new signal caller. It's all upside. And I think these guys provide a huge amount of upside, but you can get them 2+ rounds later than you can the tier one guys. Now, is there a tier break? Yes, there is. I think the top 3 guys are going to score more than the next guys. But if you're going after the top 3 guys, you're sacrificing another position. And this is draft strategy 101. If you are going after one position, you are sacrificing another one, unless you choose to go for a particular strategy like late round QB, late round tight end, what have you. You are making a decision tactically that I favour this position over another. I want Patrick Mahomes over Stephon Diggs, over Justin Jefferson, over someone else, depending on where he goes. And we'll see over in the coming weeks when we do some mock drafts where these players lie. Now, for those of you watching on YouTube, you'll see I've got a cheeky nod to players who are great, but I think maybe don't have the league winning potential. You'll notice something common about 4 of these 5 first guys. Maybe Patrick Mahomes being the exclusion there, because Patrick Mahomes is just Patrick Mahomes. Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields, and Lamar Jackson all can run. Now, when I look at QBs who can't but can provide QB1 value, and I say that as being top 12 value in a 12 QB league, I'm looking for players who I know can sling the rock. That sounds weird. It wasn't meant to sound like singing crack rock or anything like that. I'm going to get demonetized. Not that I'm monetized at the moment, but guys who can throw the ball a lot and who are more pocket passers. And I don't think there's a better example than that of the person I'm hovering over, Justin Herbert. Again, I'm not wish casting because I've got him on my dynasty team and I want him to do well. I think he'll do fantastically. Got new offensive coordinator. Is it Kellen Moore? I think he's got Kellen Moore now, who did wonders for Dak Prescott. He's got a load of weapons around him. Quentin Johnson. He's got Mike Williams and Keenan Allen potentially playing for contracts or playing to be picked up at free agency elsewhere. He's got a lot around him, and just the weapons that he's got. I think he's got an extra passing. He's got an extra receiver in Austin Eckler, so that's something that I don't think can be dismissed too early. And there's a bunch of other players in there as well who I think are going to be heavy passers. And of course, we can not go without saying the new Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers. I think he's in that similar vein. I think he is due a regression to the mean or back to his normal self potentially. In the land of the Jets, in New York or New Jersey, wherever they lie, but I think he has a fantastic chance to come good this year. And there's a couple of other players who I think are going to be there or thereabouts in that range as well. I think Joe Burrow is in that tier as well. Who they're going to deliver QB1 performances, potentially not the highs that you see out of these tier 1 and league winner type guys, but Joe Burrow incredibly efficient, incredibly talented, incredibly accurate. He is going to be fantastic. And there is one more guy who I'm going to put in here, and that is Trevor Lawrence. I think Trevor Lawrence has all the tools at his disposal around him. He's got a highly paid wide receiver, a couple of highly paid wide receivers. He's got a good tight end, good coaching, and he could be as good as Andrew Luck was. I think he is going to be really good this season, and I'm really rooting for him. So yeah, Trevor Lawrence, you have made the QB1 list. Now you'll notice that at the moment there are 9 guys in this list, and typically we go for 12 as being a top 12. So I'm going to complete my solid starters with 3 guys who I think have the ability to have that QB1 outcome range, but maybe I don't think will be quite as good as this lot. So in a typical draft, you're seeing these guys go, the top tier 1 guys go round 1 or 2, maybe lead the league winner group, Justin Fields and Lamar Jackson going just behind. We're seeing the QB1s. Well, realistically, we're seeing Aaron Rodgers go a lot later, but I think he has a lot more potential. So maybe I'm actually going to move him up my list further because he is more valuable. I think you can pick him up later, but I think he will provide you value. So if he's still on your board and you're drafting in this way, you can go pick him up and maybe overpay, quote unquote, on ADP for him. But these guys will probably go anywhere between the 4th and the 6th round. So what we're looking at here is back end, mid tier quarterbacks who have a chance to be good based on their situation. And I think there's no one who's got a better situation than Mr. Dak Prescott. He has got CD Lamb, who is a all-out wide receiver 1. Even if his numbers don't show it, I think he's going to be a lot better. He's got Brandon Cooks. I think he's got a lot of talent. I really do. I don't think he's going to wow the world. He did lead the league in receptions last year. Interceptions last year. But I still think he's got a lot of talent. I think he's shown enough over the years to prove that he is going to be a solid starter and has QB1 potential. Alongside that is a name that you probably wouldn't expect me to put in here. We have Jared Goff. Jared Goff was really good last year. He is a former number 1 pick for a reason. He has a lot of talent, a lot of latent talent. He's well coached as well. Can't remember his name, Ben something, the OC in Detroit. I should have remembered from Hard Knocks, which is going to be really fun this year with the Jets under the microscope. But Jared Goff was one of those darlings last year who was picked up off the waiver wire and did amazingly. And he was also picked up on the waiver wire with Geno Smith. Geno Smith is being my last solid starter here. So yeah, I think in the same way, he's shown a lot of talent. He's got a lot of weapons around him. I think he will do well. I think the system plays well for him, and I think he will score you a lot of points, or enough points that he won't kill your team. And that's probably what you want here. In the solid starter range, these are players who won't kill your team. You're not overpaying for. You can get these guys between the 7th and 10th round, maybe even later. Yeah, I really like them. And I don't think this is the order necessarily they'll go in drafts, because draft mentality is ADP leads everything. What does the group think? These are my tiers, and these are how I'm going to draft. And I'll try and do that for you in either a mock draft setting at the end of this, or we'll do one all together and just put everything, be really strict with our tiers. So we've got 11 guys. We've got from the top: Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields, Lamar Jackson, but Aaron Rodgers, Joe Burrow, can't remember his name, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert, Dak, Jared Goff, and Geno Smith. That's 11, I think. Counting around that. Anyway, the guy I'm putting as being a big tier break, because he could be massively boom or bust, is of course Anthony Richardson. And I really hope I picked the right guy there. I think that's Anthony Richardson. I'm not great with faces because we normally see them with helmets on. But Anthony Richardson, I think going into the draft, I thought he had a huge amount of potential. I wanted him in my rookie draft. I didn't get him, unfortunately. I was left with the booby prize of Jahmyr Gibbs. Oh no. But yeah, he has the potential to be a fantastic athlete. And I think he's in a situation with Shane Steichen. He will do well. I think he will do well. I think that's enough said. he is that borderline QB1, QB2 kind of guy. He will either be great or he will be naff, but you're paying back end money for him. Currently, I think he's going QB9 because people see, people are paying potential this early on in the off season. But I don't think he'll end up that way. I think he'll probably end up going QB15 when we're finally drafting. But I think he has a potential to be up in this mix. Can you trust it? Do you want him to be your number one? I think at this point, if you want him to be your number one, you're going to have to pay with someone who has potential to, or be a sleeper hit later down the line. And we'll get on to that in the second half of this. But for now, let's just take a little break. Let's reset the PC, and we'll come back and talk in a second. Hello, everyone, and we're coming straight back into it with a bit more tier magic, but we're going down to the second half. But I think, even though this is the second half, I still think there is a lot of value to be seen across the board here. Now, QB2 is a position, or is a tier that I think maybe gets slammed on a little bit, and I'm probably going to adjust some of these guys in my rankings, but these are probably the guys that if you've gone heavy on running back and wide receiver, you're saying I probably need one of these guys to just make sure my team works. And I think there are some really interesting names here. I'm going to start with someone who I think polarized a lot of people, and I like the color that his color matches the tier color here. We're going for Tua Tagovailoa. I think Tua has the potential to be more than a QB2 if he can stay on the field, and that is a big, big if. Obviously, last year he was injured a lot, and I think everyone felt so bad for him. He really suffered through some stuff, and those concussions were not fun. But if he comes back and becomes anything nearby, he's got two fantastic wide receivers at his disposal, and potentially a new weapon in Devin A.K.A, who can really deliver upon some of that early promise that has been shown by Tua Tagovailoa. Someone not maybe at the opposite end of his career, Kirk Cousins. If you had Kirk Cousins last year, you were not unhappy most of the time. Didn't do anything fancy, didn't do anything to kill your team either, though. But that's what you want out of a QB2, and he is attached to weapons. Again, we look at Justin Jefferson, who is the wide receiver one, probably the 101 in a lot of people's draft expectations. He's not going to become the 101 by not being throwing the ball. And who's going to throw the ball? His quarterback. That's why I'm putting Kirk Cousins in this mix. I'm putting Daniel Jones in here as well. This feels awkward. I don't like Daniel Jones as a player. I think he's awkward, not particularly accurate, but he has got a big arm, and it feels like he's got a big heart. It feels like he's a leader. And that sounds really weird. They've obviously shown a little bit of faith into him, not so much that they can't get rid of him, but I think they have seen something, and I think we saw something, and he did deliver some 30-plus point performances, which puts him in that QB1 range from time to time, and that's what you want out of QB2. You want him to be solid enough, and he's going to pick up 5 or 6 points on the ground, potentially, if not more, if he can run in a touchdown, and that's what you're hoping for out of him. He's got upside, I guess, in that QB2 slot, and I think he will have a similar end-of-season outcome as these two other guys. And I'm going to put, maybe going to escalate one guy, but I'm going to put 2 more people in here. I'm going to put Deshaun Watson in here. Not because of anything I've seen. I did not like his performances last year. In those 6 games, he was naff. No doubt about it. Jacoby Brissett was better. But they have a huge amount of faith in him. Obviously, otherwise they wouldn't have paid him the money. He has got weapons around him still. He's still got Nick Chubb. He's got Amari Cooper, who is secretly really good, and I think everyone should probably chalk up his last year's performance to a bit of ring rust. Ring rust at his own fault, but ring rust nonetheless, and that's why he's the kind of tier break on my tier 2 here. And we've got some people who are on the bubble, and I've put guys in my next tier as being on the slide. Now, on the slide are guys maybe that. And bearing in mind, I'm not differentiating these tiers between dynasty and different formats, redraft, etc. These are guys who I think are going to have outcomes in certain ways. But it just so happened that I've got a bunch of guys who are maybe nearing the twilights of their career being picked up in this group here. I'm going to start off with Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford obviously had an amazing time in Ramsland in my not my home city of LA, in my team. I support the Rams. I've always supported them since they were in St. Louis. So he was amazing. Took souls from Tom Brady during that Super Bowl run, and then came crashing down to a halt with injuries last year. I still think Matthew Stafford is Matthew Stafford, and I still think Cooper Kupp is Cooper Kupp, and I still think this offense, who will probably be behind because that defense is trash, will throw a lot. And Matthew Stafford is a candidate for. He's a really surprised. I think he's maybe even boom or bust if I'm going to put him in it, but I'm going to put him on the slide because I don't think it'll last. I think we'll maybe get 1 or 2 more years out of him, and he has been on the slide. And he hasn't proven otherwise because even when he did come back in relief at some points last year, he wasn't fantastic. But I've got faith in him. He's just outside that QB2 range. You know, if you counted the numbers here, he is a QB2. But I think he's maybe not going to perform in the same way that Tua, Kirk, Daniel Jones, and Deshaun Watson are, which sounds weird because Matthew Stafford, I think everyone agrees, is better. The benefit on this one, though, is that he's being drafted as though you're avoiding him. He's being drafted 12th, 13th round in a lot of drafts. He's sometimes free for people. So if you're looking at the balance of play and where you're drafting him, I still think Matthew Stafford has a huge amount of upside. Alongside that, there are a couple of other names here that are maybe aging out, and Russell Wilson being one of them. Russell Wilson was objectively trash last year, but a lot of people are seeing the potential in him. Is he going to slide? You know, there's talks in camp that maybe his number 2 is playing better than him. I don't really believe that. I still think he's going to have a bit of a comeback. Maybe my predictions were just a year out. Let's say that. Yeah, I think he's going to be fantastic. Sorry, not fantastic. Fantastic in comparison to what he was last year, and I still think he has weapons around him in Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton. Even though probably a lot of people don't want to draft Courtland Sutton, but I still think he'll be great. Not quite in the twilight of his career, but getting close there. And another part of that old guard is Derek Carr, who was his exit from the Raiders was handled badly, no doubt about it, and he goes to a place where Sean Payton has just come from. I don't think he's going to be in a great position, but he's got a lot of weapons around him. And the same reason why I've talked about Justin Jefferson making Kirk Cousins good, Cooper Kupp making Matthew Stafford good. I think Chris Olave is the real deal. I think Chris Olave will elevate Derek Carr's play. Maybe not quite as much as Devontae Adams did, but I still think he's going to be fantastic. As in Chris Olave. Derek Carr is efficient. He's got to throw the ball. He maybe doesn't quite fit the system in my head. So that's why I'm putting him on the slide here. But I still think his range of outcomes is going to be a lot better than some of the bums that we're going to be talking about in a little bit. And finally, I'm putting Jimmy G on that playlist. He's taken Derek Carr's place. I don't really see there being a great deal for him. He's probably on the border of too much uncertainty here. You know what? I'm actually going to chuck him down in too much uncertainty because I'm not favouring him. With injury uncertainty, he's someone that I would avoid in any draft these days, and I'm going to call that audible now. Jimmy G, potentially avoid him because there's too much uncertainty. If there's not, he's thrown to Devontae Adams, which is really good. So if you're picking him up as your second QB, he's going to be behind a solid starter. If you've got that much capital behind you, or behind a QB2, and he could potentially have those spike weeks where Devontae Adams is going to go off. That's great. Jimmy G isn't that kind of player though, so yeah, he's maybe someone who I think has too much uncertainty and not enough upside to rank highly here. We're going to move on to the guys I think have got potential, and I'm probably going to move some things around here. But yeah, I'm going to stick in 2 guys here, and I think this is the guy. I think we're missing a starting quarterback somewhere here, aren't we? I think we're missing. Oh, is that CJ Stroud? That's CJ Stroud. There we go. So I'm going to put Kenny Pickett and Bryce Young in the potential. Different reasons. Kenny Pickett, I think we've seen he can be good. We've also seen he can be bad, but I think with another year under his belt, I think he will be good. And he, in a poor quarterback class last year, he was the best of a bad bunch. I think he'll come good this year. I really do. And Bryce Young, I think, has the potential because there's so much capital involved in him. He was the QB1, the 101. He will be made good. Whether he comes out of the blocks good, because I think though that receiver core is poor, I think he will make that receiver core better because he is very, very gifted. I really like him. And as your second QB who might be a late sleeper, the same way we drafted Trey Lance last year. Yeah, he's a guy that I think could come good. Now joining Jimmy G in the uncertainty pool, I'm just going to chuck a load of names here. Kyler Murray, he's probably not going to play much this season. We've got Jordan Love, who doesn't even appear on this list, in that list as well. We have Brock Purdy and Trey Lance as a pair in there. I just think there's too much uncertainty. And, even because of that, I'm probably going to drop Purdy and Trey Lance down to the avoid column. They're not people I'm going to look to pick up anytime soon. I think as well as that, there's too much uncertainty to draft well, or I think has a bit of upside, is Sam Howell. I think he's probably going to beat out Brissett. I think Brissett will play a little bit. We haven't got a Brissett picture here, but I think he's got a chance to do something. I like Sam Howell's chances, and maybe he's in my potential column. But I think with the draft capital that's behind him, there is a bit of uncertainty, and they have. Ron Rivera is known to do some weird things, so I think with that there's too much uncertainty there. I am going to put in CJ Stroud in the. I don't know where I'm going to put him. I'm going to put him in the potential column, but the low part of the potential column, because I don't think he's in quite as good a situation as we have for Bryce Young. I don't think he's quite as talented. I think it's a bit 1A, 1B as far as rookie quarterbacks go. In terms of the way they play, they can both move. Bryce Young is maybe slightly more agile than CJ Stroud, but we'll have to see how that plays. But he has potential, but I don't think quite as much based on the weapons around him. I weirdly favour the Panthers over the Texans. And to finish off on this with too much uncertainty, I'm going to put Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill could have a great season, and he could have been on the slide list, but he's not someone that I am looking to draft above these guys, and I don't think his outcomes are going to be as good as this group of guys in the potentials or the on the slide category. I think Ryan Tannehill is going to be. I think he might sit out a few games because I don't think they're going to have a particularly competitive season. I could be completely wrong, and the Titans could go on an absolute worldie. Just sit behind Derrick Henry being a train, but he's not someone that I really like. And then we're left with three guys who, they're just going to go straight in this bottom tier. I think jokingly in the thumbnail to this, I put Mac Jones and Billy Zappi at the top, but no, Mac Jones, Baker, and Desmond Ridder I'm avoiding on all three fronts. I think out of those, this lot, I think probably elevate Mac Jones above the best of the rest, but I don't think they have great outlooks for very different reasons. Mac Jones, I don't think he has a trust of the Patriots staff. That was evident last year. Although, if we say that some players were worse because they're offensive coordinators and he's out from under Matt Patricia, maybe he could be good. Baker, I think, is going to have a difficult time over in Tampa. And Desmond Ridder, they're going to be run first, so he's just not going to get the opportunity. So there's your tiers. We've gone all the way through. I'll leave them on my socials for you guys to have a read and a second. But that's it. We'll take a look in a minute on the other side, and we'll maybe just do a little bit of a sample draft, a short draft, and see if we can stick to our guns and see where we would draft players, and we'll have a bit of commentary behind your draft decisions for quarter. Hello everyone, welcome back, and brand new day, brand new draft. Let's get into this. As promised, we're going to see if we can put these tiers into action here. Let's see if we can just give ourselves as much screen real estate as possible. Right, on the left-hand side of your screen, if you're watching on YouTube, you have the tiers. So we have Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts in tier 1. We've got Justin Fields and Lamar Jackson in our league winner tier. They're the guys who I think are picked up at a good value range. This is going to be an interesting tier because we've got our one-dimensional QBs, who I don't think are one-dimensional in the strictest sense, but I think they give you one thing and they do it well. I think it would be most interesting to see where Aaron Rodgers goes here. Got solid starters who are a tier below. It'd be interesting to see if Aaron Rodgers actually looks in the ADP range there. Anthony Richardson, kind of tailing off on our QB1 range. QB2s with Tua Tagovailoa, Kirk Cousins, Danny Jones, and of course Deshaun Watson. The guys on the slide are veterans here: Matt Stafford, Russ, and Derek Carr. The guys with a lot of potential are two brand new rookies: CJ Stroud and of course Bryce Young, as well as Pickett, who I do think is better than people give him credit for. I think it's going to be a decent offense under Tomlin over there. And the guys with a bit too much uncertainty: Kyler, Jimmy G, Sam Howell, Tannehill, the guys who are looking to avoid Mac Jones, the guys over in the 49ers, although I'm avoiding him because there's so much uncertainty there. And, you could throw Sam Darnold into the mix. Baker Mayfield, who is once a great, and Desmond Ridder, who I just don't think has a scheme to suit him. We are going to start the draft here. And what we're going to do is we're just going to take the approach where we're just going to comment about what happens. So really, I'm not trying to win this draft. I'll probably take some typical actions that I would take. But bearing in mind, this is a bit of a forced activity, because what you want to be doing is drafting in multiple tiers. And we'll go over that over the next week. And we'll add tiers into running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. But let's just see in the middle of July, or start of July, how things start working out, and how you can manipulate the draft in order to get the best QB that you want to get. All right, we're going to start the draft. That's fine. We're going to take a random position, and we have the number 11 slot. I don't get lucky. I've recently drawn the number 14 slot in one of my leagues, out of 14. And that was in a lottery draft as well, which I definitely had a chance to do something else. So, first choice. At this point, what are we going to do? At number 11, we've already had Christian McCaffrey go, Austin Eckler, Travis Kelce's gone, Saquon Barkley has just went at 10. 2 minutes on the clock here. Now, if you look at ADP here, the options are at QB. You've got Patrick Mahomes standing above the rest. Do I want to sacrifice this position for another position? And this is what we were talking about. Do you want to sacrifice another position for getting the best QB out there? Now, if you look at projections, 370 for Patrick Mahomes, 362 for Josh Allen, 353 for Jalen Hurts. In terms of points per game, there's not a huge amount in it. So what I'm actually going to do is hold, because there isn't the end of that tier break yet. I don't think it will necessarily come round, but when I'm looking at my other tiers, I'm seeing Stephon Diggs as being at the bottom end of my tier of really fantastic wide receivers. I do think he'll have a better season than Devontae Adams based on the quarterback play. So I'm going to go for Stephon Diggs as my first pick at number 11. Coming back to me at 202, I'm in the same situation. I could take Mahomes still, and I think he would be an okay pick. But when I'm looking at, this is a 12-man league, which some of you may be in, some of you may be in smaller leagues, some of you may be in bigger leagues. But from experience, running backs go fast. And so, based on the fact that I've got to start two running backs in this as well, it's always worthwhile. Go back into draft 1 or 2, understand how you're drafting, understand the format. This is a PPR league. I want a running back who I know is going to catch the ball some, and who is going to be a good option for that team. And you know what? There's one name that jumps out to me here. I've still got Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts available to me. No one's taken no one's taken a quarterback yet. It's going to take a while to get back to me. So, the next lot of guys, Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson, may fall off, but we'll have to see. But I'm going to stand firm. I'm not going to take this tier 1. I'm not going to start the break, and I'm going to instead take Josh Jacobs. The rest of the second goes pretty much how we would expect. Patrick Mahomes goes 205. So that's the first one for that tier. So we definitely can't have him. Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts both go in the second round. Okay, so this is what you're seeing. So if you want a tier 1 quarterback in my range, you need to give up a second round pick. And already, the way this is looking at, we've got our first league winner, Lamar Jackson, going in the third. So if you want a league winner here, you might have to give up a third. My opinion is you wait, and you potentially, if you want a league winner tier kind of guy, you wait in for Justin Fields. And I know there's a lot put on him. He's effectively a second year quarterback. But he's there, and we've lost our first guy in the QB1 dimensional. Again, it sounds like I'm slandering them. I'm really not. I think these guys are all fantastic. But for me, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, right, who's going to come back to me? I've got a pick in 3, and potentially Justin Fields is there for me. I still think there's a lot to pay for him because I'd like to pair him up, and still think there's gaps in my roster elsewhere. And when I'm looking at this tier, well, will one of these guys come back to me in the fifth potentially? So you know what, I'm going to defer the decision one more pick, and I'm going to pick another player who I think is going to be a big receiving threat and is going to tap out that running back room. I'm going to go for Jahmyr Gibbs. Getting a lot of this stack. This is Diggs, Jacobs, Gibbs. I'm maybe reaching in some areas for it, but yeah, that's where it is. Now, if I look at my list here, I've got a big tier break here at Justin Fields. I have that is the last of the league winners, and I don't think he's getting back to me. Justin Herbert isn't unlikely to get back to me, but then I look at Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is my last of that tier break. I've got Aaron Rodgers in there. Aaron Rodgers is weirdly really low, and maybe I think about where Aaron Rodgers is going in ADP and the fact that I've got him ranked above a lot of other people. You know, I could get him potentially in round 11 looking at this. So you know what? I'm starting to see how this draft is shaping out, and I'm going to defer the decision anymore. Make sure I have guys who I think are going to be key in other positions first. It's not quite wait on the late round QB, but I think it's something to just stick by your guns. If you think someone's going to be good, trust that instinct. Now, I think Justin Fields is going to be good, but is he going to be that much better? And and if you want to think about what the difference is in your tiers here, and for me, there is a decent amount of difference, but I think I would suffer more if I didn't go for the other positions. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a one QB. I've got six other positions to line up, and those players are going to go fast. And looking at my position, I could gain a positional advantage in other players. So Team 8, for example, hasn't got a running back here. Team 1 hasn't got a wide receiver. Most of the top tight ends are going. So I'm actually going to go for a guy who I think is going to be fantastic in that position as my wide receiver 2. Effectively get 2 wide receiver 1s, DK, Metcalf. So far, I've got Diggs, Metcalf, Jacobs, and Gibbs. We then see a bit of a run on those kind of next level tight ends. Is there still a tight end I've kind of got my eye on? Justin Fields does go at the end of the fourth, so that's that group has stepped down. But someone who is potentially coming back to me, and I was correct, someone who's come back to me is Trevor Lawrence. Now, I'm thinking, do I go after Trevor Lawrence? And I'm thinking maybe I do, because I'm looking at my other positions of strength that I want here. And if I think about I've got two people who I think could be, wide receiver, running back ones in PPR formats. I've got 2 wide receiver 1 type players in my wide receiver. So I'm drafting from a position of authority here. So I want to get as good a player as I can. And I do think that Trevor Lawrence is going to have a better time than Aaron Rodgers. I know it's you really read left to right. Maybe I'll adjust things a little bit in my rankings when I publish them properly. But I think Aaron Rodgers is going to have a better time. No, I do think Trevor Lawrence is going to have a better time than Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers has got a lot of new things to adapt to. Trevor Lawrence is on the up. Potentially, you could drop him down to here, and he will probably be drafted alongside these guys. Maybe a bit even low. Maybe even drafted alongside these guys. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be drafted alongside the likes of Russ and Cooper Kupp. But we'll have a look at that when it comes about. I'm going to go to a position of strength, and I'm going to bite the bullet and go QB. Not quite late round, not quite mid round. Going to go for a 5th round QB in Trevor Lawrence and secure what I think is a QB1. And if we look at the guys who've been drafted, we've got Patrick Mahomes 1, 2, 3, in Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow. That makes 5. Justin Fields, Justin Herbert, and Trevor Lawrence. So I've got the QB8 according to this list. Which, you know what, if you're happy there, you feel like that's he's not going to damage you too much. And if you look at Trevor Lawrence. If I can actually look at him here, so a player card here. And you kind of look at his projections here. We're looking at 20 plus points per game. Compare that to someone who's still on the board and who would be in the next tier break. You've got Dak Prescott here. He's still looking about the 20s, but I still feel like based on that tier break, Trevor Lawrence just has something more in him, and I think he was on the ascendancy last year. Whereas if you look at the play call for these guys, I think it maybe is going to drop a level, especially in Dallas, where I think they are going to suffer with potentially Mike McCarthy calling the plays there. Right, I'm now going to fill up the rest of my roster. So this is maybe academic, but I'm looking at a player who I think is going to be fantastic, and he is probably in my second tier of guys. Now he's moved to the Giants. I'm going to go with Darren Waller. So my team so far is looking formidable. Stephon Diggs, Josh Jacobs, Jameer Gibbs, DK Metcalf, Trevor Lawrence, Darren Waller. Oof, this is looking pretty tasty. You know, part of me kind of regrets the Darren Waller decision, but based on the fact it's actually a small pool here, and I'm looking at drafting the best player available in my flex effectively at this point. I could have waited and gone Evan Ingram in the next round, where I might still pick him up because there are still some question marks around Darren Waller when it comes to injury, performance, etc. But really, I'm just going to go for the best player available, and I've got to think of maybe a bit more about my team dynamics on depth. And I think where we're looking at here, the depth play is definitely going to be, it's going to have to be a running back. There aren't that many great running backs. And if I look at who might come back to me, look at some A.K.A, Ryan, who I think could be a decent running back. 3, Devon A.K.A, who I think could be there's that age-old adage, that rookie running backs will get play. So I'm just going to pick who I think is going to be a good player, who I think is going to get a lot of play. And I think, well enough, I'm going to go with a value play in Quentin Johnson. And yes, he'll get back to me. You know what? I might deny myself that. Second year wide receivers, even with bad quarterbacks, generally get a lot of plays. And as it's a flex play, it only takes for someone to get injured, and he is the wide receiver 1 in that system. Jahan Dotson, get into my side. Deshaun Watson, Dak Prescott go either side of me. So I've then got another option for best player available. I don't particularly like the options at running back, and I've maybe hampered myself a little bit by going for a Washington player. So Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson wouldn't do well for me off the board there. So you know what? I'm going to go for a little bit of depth at tight end, and the fact that he could have a great performance as well. I'm looking for upside here, but stacking depth at tight end, I'm going for Evan Ingram. Now, I have kicked the can a little bit on running back, so maybe this is going to look a little bit weaker. I'm going to hope that someone like Devon A.K.A, Khalil Herbert come back to me, maybe both even. I'm looking further down. Jerick McKinnon is an interesting prospect because he had such a great performance at the end of last season. We finally see Tua Tagovailoa go. So he's actually in my QB2 range. He goes ahead of Anthony Richardson, who I think has more potential. Dak Prescott and Deshaun Watson have both gone. Jared Goff and Gino still here as in my perspective, solid starters. I would still be happy getting them. So in my top 4 tiers, 1, 2, 3, we've got Aaron Rodgers, Jared Goff, and Geno Smith still available, and I think their range of outcomes is going to be as good, if not better, than some of the guys who are going around this, like Tua Tagovailoa. I think Tua is boom or bust in that respect. But there are some interesting players still available to me. I'm going to stack up on late round running backs here. So I'm going to pick up some A.K.A, Ryan, who I think, again, PPR formats, he's a third down back. He was great there in Cincinnati. And I'm going to go for Devon A.K. because I think he could maybe rise above the rest in that format as well. Kirk Cousins goes, so our QB2 range is going. All right, Aaron Rodgers has finally gone middle of the 10th. To a team that didn't have he's their QB1. It's not a depth play. It's not like they picked up someone else. He's gone to team number 6, who then picked up back to back. They picked up Geno Smith. Interesting. Daniel Jones has also gone as well. So in that tier, we've ran out of QB2s. We're down to the guys who are potentially on the slide. So do any of these teams not have a QB? That's interesting to see. Team 4 has a QB, Team 5 has a QB, Team 6 has 2 now, Team 7 has 1. We're not Team 10. Yeah, so everyone's got a QB now. So at this point, you're thinking, right, well, is there any benefit to having a second QB on my roster? And you want to think about it in terms of balancing your tendencies for risk versus reward here. So if I was Anthony Richardson's owner, I would be looking for a second quarterback. He's already got Joe Burrow. I think that was a stupid decision, but the computer makes stupid decisions. Anyway, Joe Burrow does have a little bit of injury history. Based on the fact that I've got someone who I think is relatively bulletproof, he's a strong guy, he's a big guy, he's not particularly mobile, he's not getting out of the pocket all the time. I'm comfortable with rolling as with with Trevor Lawrence as my guy. So I'm just going to pick up guys with upside here. So I'm going to be looking at players who I think could emerge. I'm going, because I've gone for late round running backs, I want a bit more depth, because probably one of these guys is going to get dropped in the first couple of weeks. Kendra Miller, I think, stands a chance at starting for part of the season, potentially, if Kamara's out, and the reports out of rookie training camp was really encouraging. And then, you know what? I'm actually going to risk it all. The guys who are on the slide here are interesting, but we've got Jared Goff kicking around here, and I know I said I wasn't going to take a second quarterback, but at some point he's not going to play. To Trevor Lawrence, he's got 11th week bye. Jared Goff has a bye in the 9th. He's effectively free in this. Obviously, we haven't done a huge bench depth or anything like that on this mock. I don't want you to be here for ages, but I'm going to go for Jared Goff as my final choice because he's in that solid starter tier. I think there's too much value there to give up. He's the last guy in that tier, and we have once again gone for a tier break player. So he's a Russell Wilson goes straight after. And do any of the quarterbacks go before the end? I would be surprised if one more goes. No, there's not another one goes. Now, this is maybe not the best way. We probably have an extra round when it comes to bench plays, and maybe there's an extra a couple of rounds in terms of your flex plays, and if you have 3 wide receivers. So always think about those kind of considerations when coming into the draft. But I think we drafted Trevor Lawrence at the end of that tier break for QB one dimensional. Yes, we could have waited for Aaron Rodgers, but I wanted to try something out and maybe go for a 2 QB setup here. I'm really comfortable with where he is there. The rest of our team is looking solid because of that as well. Because we didn't gamble it all on the tier ones, we went with a tier that we were comfortable with going forward with. We were able to get Josh Jacobs, Jahmyr Gibbs, who I think is a tandem who has got a lot of potential in PPR formats. The wide receivers, I think, are going to be incredible, gangbusters there. We've got 2 tight ends with a lot of potential here. Jahan Dotson, Samaje Perine. We're maybe lacking a bit of depth at wide receiver. Maybe I dismissed that a little bit, and maybe I should have gone back to the well for a couple of guys. But if I look at the can't look at who's left now, unfortunately. But if we think about who might be left, there's Van Jefferson still available, who I think could be a depth play. There are guys on this team who I think could be dropped. Kendra Miller, if it could be dropped after week 5 or 6, if he's not playing after the potential suspension of I forgot his name now, of Alvin Kamara. Samaje Perine might not emerge as the third down back that we once thought he was. Devin A.K.A. may not do that. So there's balance in this play, but I think that my front 7 players are fantastic, and I think Jared Goff as a pickup in the last round was a steal. So that is effectively looking at tiers in a vacuum. So I'm not thinking about everything else, but you can't look at it in a vacuum every time. But I think this is hopefully a good demonstration of how you could draft quarterbacks in your league. Right, we'll join you back on the other side, and we'll say goodbye and give you a preview of what to look forward to next week. Right, thank you again for listening, for watching, however you're doing this. It's been really fun doing something a bit different to what we've been doing the last few weeks, which is well, what have we been doing the last few weeks? We're doing a lot of we're going to be doing a lot of draft content moving forward. So I'm hoping this doesn't get samey, and I'm hoping that you find some value in each one of these particular draft tier episodes. So next week, I'm not sure who I'm going to go for, but I'm probably going to go for wide receivers. Yeah, let's go for wide receivers next week, because I still think there's a lot of flux in the running back market, and I just want to give myself a little bit more time to work out what's happening there. So next week we'll tackle wide receivers. So it's probably going to be a bigger episode when it comes to the actual tiers side of things. There's a lot more players there, so we'll maybe only do a quick draft at the end, maybe a shorter one. But hopefully you found this valuable, and hopefully you're going to move forward thinking about how to draft in a slightly different way. Yeah. As I said in the draft 102, it was the last point, but probably the most important point to draft in tiers. It's revolutionized the way I draft. I'm much more strategic about things without having to put a huge amount more effort in there, because there are instant tier makers. Fancy Pros do a great one. If you're a subscriber to the Fancy Footballers, Their Ultimate Draft Kit has this all built in, or you can do what I do and just put it on the screen and just give yourself a gut feeling and rank them accordingly. It's not so analytical that you have to get into projections and exactly what people are going to be doing any given week, but it does give you an advantage over people who aren't doing it this way. And I think if we look at the results from the CPU created teams, I think we stand head and shoulders above them in this. But do give me your thoughts. Drop me a comment. I'd love to hear from you on any of the socials. We are at Rugby with Pads on Twitter and Instagram at the moment. Although Twitter, if you can see more than 600 tweets, maybe you'll be able to see mine. I don't know. We might even be moving on to Threads because I think that actually launches tomorrow. This has been recorded on Wednesday the 5th, so maybe we'll launch that as well. You can continue to support the pod on YouTube as well. We're at Rugby Pads there as well. Funny enough, it's quite a theme. And of course, you can get a membership to the pod, support the pod from as little as £1 a month, and also get yourself some merch over at rugbywithpads.com. The competition is still open. I haven't dropped it into this episode, but look out on socials, and we'll be doing a push for memberships coming into the season when the content will be heating up. We will do a state of the pod soon as well, so you'll see that episode. But for now, we'll see you next week. Thank you so much for listening, for watching, however you're receiving this content, and I will see you on the virtual gridiron.